Maybe that's why they're not here.
I wanted to wish her a happy birthday. She's supposed to be here.
Well,
She is
I'll
so.
remember.
She's here every
That's-
so often.
By the way, we're on, so clean up your language, people. We're recording. We're going out.
Wow.
So welcome everybody. We are continuing in the Gospel of Mark, which of course is Peter's Gospel. Probably the first one written, the shortest one, and we are moving inexorably to the end here. It's still Maundy, Thursday, but we'll be moving into Good Friday as we look at our texts today. So let's begin with a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, for all your blessings. Thank you for gathering us here tonight. Lord, as always, we ask that you would be a part of this study, that you would send your Holy Spirit to anoint us, give us eyes to see and ears to hear and hearts and minds to receive all that you will give to us tonight. Help us to understand your word and to apply it to our lives. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So last week, we saw Jesus anointed for his burial. We looked at the Passover meal and the institution of the Lord's Supper. This week, we're going to be moving to the Garden of Gethsemane. We're also going to see Jesus predicting Peter's betrayal and that they're all going to fall away. And of course, no, there's no way that's going to happen. Not me, Lord. And by the end, they're all going to abandon Jesus from the garden. And we're going to end on a happy note with Jesus' betrayal and arrest. So, sorry, some of these weeks, it's going to be a downer at the end. That's just the way things happen. But we're also going to end with an intriguing verse that we may actually meet John Mark himself here in this. Yes, some of you have noticed the first streaker. We may meet a streaker tonight. So hold on to your hats. Rita's excited now. All right. So let's. Who would like to read our passage? We've just got one chunk tonight, verses 26 through 52. Janet, thank you.
And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Even though they all fall away, I will not." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. But he said emphatically, "If I must die with you, I will not deny you." And they all said the same. And they went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took with him Peter and James and John, and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." And going a little farther, he fell on the ground and prayed that, if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." And he came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not watch 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to answer him. And he came the 3rd time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." And immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away under guard." And when he came, he went up to him at once and said, "Rabbi," and he kissed him. And they laid hands on him and seized him. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And they all left him and fled. And a young man followed him with nothing but a linen cloth about his body. And they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and ran away naked.
So now that we have your attention, that's where we'll stop for tonight. So it's interesting the details that Mark chooses to include and the things that he leaves out. This is a much shorter gospel, as we've talked about, compared certainly with Matthew and Luke, and even the Gospel of John. But a lot of people skip over verse 26, when they had sung a hymn. Then they went to the Mount of Olives. This is the only time in Scripture that we find Jesus singing. But have you ever thought of Jesus as a singer?
No.
Wouldn't you love to have heard him?
I would love to. Is he a tenor? Is he a baritone? Is he a bass? Could he harmonize? Could he not carry a tune in a bucket? I don't know. We'll find out one day.
He could. He was perfect.
Oh, he can sing perfectly, you know.
We'll find out one day.
He's also modest.
Yeah. The only description we have is from Isaiah. He had nothing about him that would recommend him to us. He wasn't super handsome or super athletic, or anything like, he wasn't a cover model or anything like that. We don't know what he looked like. We don't know what his voice sounded. We'll find out one day. He rose in the same body,
I'm sure his voice
but a
is
different
fine.
body. So you're sure he's a good singer, Christy? You just want to sing duets.
No.
But,
I try to hide it.
I'm guessing we'll all think he sounds wonderful.
What?
I'm guessing we'll all think he sounds wonderful when we
I
get
think
there.
so, yeah.
I bet his voice is just so kind and melodic.
It'll draw us to him
Yes.
very much.
Like John
Go
Denver.
with the soup.
Or Karen Carpenter.
Fine.
Karen
I guess
Carpenter, I'll go
nobody's
with you,
loved
okay.
me yet. Yeah.
Yes.
But singing is a part of the Passover celebration even today. There's a great deal of singing among observant Jews who continue to practice the Passover. Quite often, the Hallel Songs are sung. That's a collection within the book of Psalms from Psalm 113 to Psalm 118. They all either begin or end with that wonderful Hebrew word, Hallelujah, which means praise the Lord. So the Hallel Psalms, the praise Psalms. Often Psalm 136 is sung. That's called the Great Hallel. That's the psalm, for those of you who are familiar with the Psalter, where every other verse is, His love endures forever, His love endures forever, His love endures forever. And generally by the end of it, if you're paying attention after you've said it 26 times, it finally starts to get into your skull. His love endures forever. Praise the Lord.
It does.
So, little side note, Jesus sang, and so should you. It bugs me sometimes when I see people standing in worship, and it's fine if you're not singing, but at least open the hymnal and follow along. I see people, they just kind of stand there and
Yes,
they just look awkward and uncomfortable.
some
and
of
I'm
the
like,
words are just amazing.
at least listen and follow along, but I won't go off on my soapbox on that one. So they finish the Passover celebration. They sing together, and then they go out back to the Mount of Olives. We've been there before for the Olivet discourse a couple weeks ago. You remember, you go out of Jerusalem, you cross the Kidron Valley and go up again on a mountain overlooking the temple and overlooking the east side of Jerusalem. And on that mountain were a great many private gardens, privately owned gardens that people in the city owned that they would use for their own personal uses. People didn't have gardens in Jerusalem. You didn't have a little backyard or a patch of flowers that you would grow within the city itself. For one thing, the city was very crowded. This is a walled city, so every inch is used. But there was also a law that you were not allowed to use manure upon the soil in the holy city itself. That makes it difficult to fertilize your garden. So if you wanted to grow flowers, if you wanted to grow olives, if you wanted to have your own grape arbor or grow some vegetables or something like that, if you were wealthy enough, you could own a private garden just outside the city on the Mount of Olives. One of those gardens was called the Garden of Gethsemane. Gethsemane means the place of crushing.
Grapes.
Olives. It was an olive garden, and not an olive garden like the restaurant. It was a garden of olive trees, a grove. I've been there. Some of those trees that are living there in Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives were alive in Jesus' time, which absolutely blew my mind.
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
When I was there, they told me that,
Uh-huh.
and then somebody who was in charge told the guy who told me that that's not true, don't say that anymore. So I don't know. There's a whole lot of things in Jerusalem. I saw 4 places where Jesus was buried, you know?
Well,
I mean, you
Maybe the
get a
root
lot of
doesn't and you
confusion.
went comes out.
and everything
So
you
it's-
take with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
But it's entirely possible.
yes.
It's entirely possible. Keeping in mind, every time we went to see a place where they built a church on something, and this was where Jesus, did a backflip and
That's true.
in a pike and a twist position, so we built a church on it. We keep in mind Jerusalem's been destroyed multiple times. So how do you know that it was right here? We do know, however, this is the Mount of Olives.
Yes, you didn't know that.
That's Mount Zion. So this area with olive trees, let's say it was probably the Garden of Gethsemane. It's small, by the way.
Yes.
Not at all as big as I had imagined it to be. But this is a privately owned garden by somebody. It was where olives were grown and processed. They had an olive press where the olives were crushed to make olive oil and other such things. It was a working garden in that sense. And Jesus clearly has permission from whoever owns this garden to use it while he is in town. And he obviously uses it enough that Judas knows where to find him, knows where he's going to be after the Passover celebration, and that overnight from Thursday into Friday. And so they go there, and it's interesting, the place called the place of crushing is where Jesus wrestles most deeply with the Lord. And he is not crushed, but he submits to be crushed. He submits to what is necessary. We have throughout the Gospels, especially in Luke, but we see it here as well, this idea that this was absolutely necessary. On the one hand, it was necessary because we have to fulfill the scriptures, right? God has said this is the way it's going to be. If it doesn't happen this way, then God is made out to be a liar, and the whole universe implodes. Which is what Satan is trying to make happen. He's trying to get Jesus to break his Father's will, and that would be utter moral chaos. But this is also what's necessary if we're going to be saved. Jesus had complete free will. He could have said, no, I'm not going to do it. He's a complete, full human being. Yes, he's fully God at the same time, but he has complete free human will like we do. He could have said no, and that's what he's wrestling with, because he doesn't want, of course he doesn't want to die.
It's his human body that will hurt.
It'll hurt, for one thing, yeah. Yeah, and it'll be humiliating, and it'll be awful, and yes.
I remember having this discussion a long time ago, I think when I was at KCC, but we were, and I wonder this now as I read this again. He knew that he was going to raise from the dead. He knew everything that was going to happen to him.
He's predicted it, yeah.
Yes. Why be so terribly upset when he knows that he's an all-knowing person?
Right.
He doesn't like pain.
He's also fully human.
All of the horror and filth and sin and awfulness and brokenness that has ever been committed throughout all time is going to be poured on him. He's going to descend into
But
hell.
he knew this.
Right.
Well, knowing something.
And he knew what the outcome was going to be.
Yes, he knew in 3 days I'm going to rise again.
Right.
But you have to go through
But you
that.
still got to go through
Right.
the Father turning his back on him and descending into hell and all of that. I mean, I can say, Vivian, I know once I pound your hand with this hammer, we're going to take you to the doctor and you'll get an x-ray and the bone will be set, and in 6 to 8 weeks you'll be healed and you'll be fine. So why would you be upset when I pick up the hammer? You don't want to go through it, even though you know. So
I just don't think it's quite the same as that example.
no, Jesus is a million
Much
times
worse.
worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Joshua, wasn't he also terribly upset with the fact that he was going to be separated from God?
Well, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think he's going to be upset, as we're going to talk about here in a second.
About the betrayal,
His dear friends are going to abandon him.
right? Of all of
Yeah.
them. The ones he
Yeah.
counted on and taught.
Yeah, and 11 of them are going to come back, but Judas isn't.
He's gonna be well, he knew what
He's gonna be
Judas was going to
alone.
do.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he knew the great love of his father and the separation,
Yeah.
I think that's the very definition of hell.
it was
Separation
exactly
from
what
God.
it was.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
didn't want to leave his father.
Right.
You've got, I mean, he's got mixed motives here. I've got it written down here. I'm trying to find, because I've jumped ahead in my notes. But I'll find it here in a second. In Hebrews, it says he agreed to this for the joy set before him.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, this is going to end up in joy
Right.
because we're going to be healed and accepted again and transformed and all of that. But in the meantime, it's going to be horrible. And he starts off here predicting, you all will fall away. And he quotes from the prophet Zechariah, chapter 13, that I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. Strike the leader, the followers go everywhere. That's what's about to happen here. And as we said, he's going to get to the point where he's utterly alone. There's nobody with him. Yeah, there are a few people standing off in the distance watching. John is going to be the only disciple plus Mary and Mary Magdalene and a few of the women. But that's it. Everyone else is running and hiding. His leader is going to deny even knowing him.
Yeah.
And of course, Judas is going to betray him with a kiss. So this is the state he's going to die in, utterly forsaken. But amazingly, that doesn't lessen his love. So I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that everyone here has been betrayed by someone you love. Someone you love at some point has let you down, turned against you, hurt you, and I'm willing to bet your first emotion in that instance was not to love them more.
No.
Your first emotion was probably, I'm going to get you for that. Or intense hurt, which then moves into anger, which then moves into depression and grief. Jesus, he went through all of that, but he didn't forsake the people who forsook him. That's the amazing love. He says, you're all going to fall away from me. He doesn't then say, so forget you all. I came, I was going to save you, but if this is how you're going to treat me, I don't think so. Y'all can go to hell. Literally, and I don't say that in a vulgar way. I say that I came to save you from that, and if this is how you're going to treat me, you can just go to where you deserve to be. He didn't do that. I might have. Let me be honest here. I'm just as frail as anybody. I would have certainly thought about it. I might have had a few mental arguments in my head, because I'm really good at arguing with people in my head. Ever have those fake conversations with people? I'm a pro at that. And brooding, yeah, but he didn't do that, yes.
So, this is kind of, maybe a little bit of a philosophical question. So we talk a lot about love being an action and not a feeling. But certainly, mostly when we speak about love, we think of affection most often. And clearly, Jesus felt affection for his disciples and many of the people with him. So he did not lose his love. However, love being an action. Do you think he lost his affection for them, though? I mean, because anger and love can be
Pretty
compatible.
equal, kind of, yeah.
Yes, the anger he had was always a righteous anger, unlike ours.
Right.
Yours.
So I think, yes, he had the capacity, not having been tainted by sin like we are, that he was able to love and be angry and be hurt all at the same time.
But do you think he still experienced love as a feeling of affection, or was it, I am going to love you even though right now I don't like you? I guess this is not an answerable
Well, like
question.
a
I don't think I can answer that, not
Like a
having a
mother's
window.
love for a child.
Right, when sometimes you look at your kids and think,
Yes.
And that's
It's not yours.
Oh, it's totally hers. So I like to think, and it helps me to understand God's love by comparing it to the way I love my kids. I love my kids, even though sometimes I'm disappointed and angry and upset. And I think, in my opinion, that it helps me understand God's love for me. I'm always going to love my kids. And that's just my thing. And I think you mentioned that before.
I guess, my question is, we bandy about the word love with being imprecise with it. To me, when I think about love in a scriptural sense, when Jesus loving it is working for God's best for these people, even though it might be miserable for them, and even though, potentially I think Jesus might have looked at them and, especially with Simon, done an eye roll when Simon's like, well, I would never, and thinking.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the poverty areas of the English language, in that we have one word that means so many different things. Greek has 4 different words for love, meaning 4 different kinds of love. And we've talked about that before. There's eros, where we get our word erotic, which means I love you for how you make me feel. This is I love ice cream, I love pizza, I love when you give me gifts, etc., etc. Lots of teenage relationships are based on this. Unfortunately, some marriages some try to found their relationship on that kind of love. It doesn't last because your feelings change. They have a word for family love for your family, storge. They have phileo, which in the Greek understanding was the highest of loves. This is love for your best friend, love for your brother. The name Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Phileo meaning love, adelphos meaning brother. So the Christians came along and added a higher love, agape love, which is God's love, what we're all striving for, what we all are searching for. You see these people that are going after philosophy, relationship after relationship, hairstyle after hairstyle, guru after guru. They're searching for acceptance and love and looking in all the wrong places. This is not I love you because of the way you make me feel. This is I love you in spite of the way you make me feel. You are hurting me, and yet I love you. And that's not natural, extraordinarily difficult. I always give a caveat here. We have to be careful sometimes how we counsel people to love this way, because many women have been told to go back into abusive relationships because of this understanding. And I always say there are times when you have to have a boundary and say, I still love you, but I'm getting out of this house. And we need to be willing to say that to people also. You have to set good boundaries in your relationships. This does not mean I'm going to be a doormat for you. And too many people have been told that. So Jesus has this kind of love, but he tells the truth. He tells the hard truth, like Janet was saying. Peter says, everyone else is going to fall away, but not me. I'm Peter. I'm super disciple. And he probably believed it. We've all made these kinds of vows, right? I swear I'm not going to do that. And we believe it. And Jesus says, before the night is over, Peter, within a couple hours, before the rooster crows for the second time, you're going to deny me 3 times. Peter says, no, if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And all of the other disciples stayed the same.
You would think that that would ring in his ears the first time it came out of his mouth.
Well, I think that's why he grabs the sword later on. I think he's going to prove how much he loves Jesus. Yeah, to me that makes sense. Especially after he's fallen asleep on Jesus, after saying, I'll always be with you. Couldn't even stay up an hour. And I'm not beating Peter up, because this is all of us, right?
Yes.
We're all here. Jesus, I'm going to follow you to the end. And then it gets hard. Yeah. So then they go to Gethsemane. And he says to his disciples, sit here while I pray. Jesus is consistent all the way through. When he needs strength, he prays. When he's about to face something he knows is difficult or a big decision, he prays. Before he met the devil in the wilderness, he prayed. Before he chose the 12 disciples, he prayed. When John the Baptist died and he was grieving, he went off to pray. Here he is, he's praying again. Again, let me suggest, if Jesus sang, we should sing too. If Jesus prayed, if Jesus needed to pray, boy do we need to pray. And he prays, and he takes Peter, James, and John with him. This is the last time that those three are together before the cross. The last time the inner circle is there, he becomes very distressed and troubled. Dr. Luke tells us that he prays so fervently. He's in such distress here, such agony, that he sweats drops of blood. And that's a real condition. It's called hematohidrosis. And that's where, under great stress, the capillaries, the blood vessels in your forehead, burst
Have you ever
under
seen
the
them?
strain. I've not seen it.
No, not even.
I've read about it.
Really?
It is rare, but it does happen. And that's where, the blood then mixes with your sweat, and you sweat blood. Blood, sweat, and tears here in the garden. And he tells the disciples to pray because they're about to face temptation. So, folks, you need to prepare. You need to put your spiritual armor on. You need to get ready. Well, they've had a heavy meal. They're stuffed full from Passover. They've had quite a few bombshells dropped on them. There's been a lot of stress, a lot of emotional strain. Plus, it's late at night. It's been a long day, and Jesus says the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I can never hear that verse without thinking of Maria von Trapp from The Sound of Music. Those of you that have read her delightful book, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's very readable, it's funny, it's a great spiritual biography. The story of the Trapp family singers. You'll find all the things they changed in the play and in the movie, including the number of children and the names. But when Maria was trying to learn English, she thought, all I need, is a German to English dictionary, right? I can just look up each word, I know the German word, find out the English word. And so this is where she made quite an impression in the lobby of her hotel when she went to quote this verse, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And it came out, the ghost is willing, but the meat is soft. Which is not quite the same thing, you might have noticed. So the ghost is willing, but the meat is soft.
Wow.
That was what was going on with the disciples here. So we have here, again, the interplay between Jesus' human nature and his divine nature. Because he knows he's come to die. He's come to obey his Father. He's come to walk this weary road, but he really would love an out at this point. And that's where he's wrestling. Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Yet, not what I will, but what you will. So, no sane person wants to go through crucifixion. Just a second. No sane person wants to go through that. But he knows, here's what I was looking for, Jesus endured the shame of the cross for the joy set before him, the joy of our salvation. So he's wrestling here. If there's any other way, if I can accomplish this any other way, I'd love for plan B, But he ends up submitting here. Yet, nevertheless, not my will but yours. Yes, what would you like to say?
Well, that was just what I was going to say. I think that sums it up very well. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Yeah,
That sums it up
That's the
pretty well.
human side of him.
yeah, and it's hard to get to that yet. It's hard to get to that nevertheless. When I don't want to do this, and sometimes I find I have to just come right out and say it out loud, I don't want to do this, Lord. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to forgive that person. I want to kick him in the teeth. You know? I don't want to have to go visit this person who's difficult to visit. They don't like me. I don't like them. But I'm their pastor. I have to go pray with them. So not my will, but yours. And Lord, help me to love them, even if I don't particularly like them. Telling you secrets now. I don't like everybody. I'm a real person. Sorry. But I strive to love everybody. It's not easy. I don't get it right all the time. But not my will, Lord. Yours be done. You know, that incredible prayer that Job prayed. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I'm not always there. Sometimes it takes a long time. It took Job. He fell away from that and had to strive to get back to it. Because the cup here, when we read about drinking the cup, that symbol is used throughout the Bible as the cup of God's wrath. Throughout the Old Testament, God says he's going to pour out the cup of his wrath against those who are actively rebelling against him. That's the cup Jesus drinks so we don't have to. That he drinks for us. He takes the wrath that is rightfully ours, the punishment that is rightfully ours, so that we can be pronounced not guilty, and then healed and transformed and born again and made new to live with him for all eternity. He descended into hell so we don't have to.
So what's Judgment Day look like? If we're already forgiven,
Oh, it's a doozy.
Yeah.
You've been there?
We studied Revelation. It's awesome. Scary.
yeah, I'm sad I missed it.
Scary.
All those crowns that we're going to be given, we're going to cast back at his feet.
We're gonna what?
Cast back at his
Take
feet.
them off and throw them at Jesus' feet.
You've given me this crown, I'm tossing it back to you, Lord, because it's all about you. I think there's going to be a lot of praise. I think a lot of singing. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of tears of those who actively chose not God, because the books are going to be open and it says every word that was said, every thought, every action has
It's
all
gonna
been
be
recorded.
perfect. Are we gonna be aware of that?
I think
Is
so.
that gonna be wiped away from our memory?
I don't think we'll ever forget how much we're forgiven, because that's part of the glory that is rightfully Jesus.
And how lucky we are to be there.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever forget that. He's still going to be bearing his scars, it says. So all we have to do is look at him and see the nail prints, and that's praise.
Well, I
to the
understand
Lord.
the praise part, but the judgment part.
But that day, what we studied too was that even if you're a believer, you will stand in front of
Right.
God with that book open,
Right,
and they're gonna read everything that you did, but then Jesus is gonna step in and say, but I vouch for this person, they're forgiven.
right. His blood will cover over all the blots in our copybook.
So there's something about initials on the forehead too, right?
Will be marked as his.
Marked as
yeah.
his.
Practice is, yeah.
And rewards will be given based on the good that we have done. It says, like we saw Sunday, we will rule with him in eternity. And think of the parable of the talents. The one who was given 3 talents gained 3 more and was given rewards.
It's hard to imagine levels of hierarchy without jealousy.
It absolutely is, isn't it? To be joyful for your brother and sister that they've been promoted above you. But that's going to be some of the joyful thing to figure out, is how how to live that way. I remember my mom was she was teaching on heaven, and junior high kid said, "You mean I'll be able to put my backpack down somewhere and not be afraid that someone will steal it?"
Oh.
Junior high, this is what he's learned. And this is the joy. Yeah, you can put your backpack down. No one's going to take it. No jealousy, no bullying, no list of transgressions recorded in your head, you know.
So, and I'm always really curious because, we're not to have a list of transgressions, but yet there's the list that's gonna be read to us. So there is a list of transgressions, so.
Right.
I guess I have sometimes a hard time, kind of making sense of those two things together. But at the end of the day, I guess, it's a useful exercise to think, when Jesus stands there and reads to me everything I did and thought today,
Said. Yeah.
is there going to be a lot of bad moments?
Yeah, I think the key is the scripture where it says, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." So it's appropriate for the Lord to exercise this judgment because his anger is a righteous anger and his love is greater. Whereas my anger is not particularly righteous.
Mine is self-righteous.
Yeah.
It's righteous, it's just self-righteous.
Yes, Vivi.
Oh, this is kind of long, but I just see this one right here. It just kind of makes me smile. It says, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest?"
Yeah. So thankfully, this gets us back on track. Thank you. So, Jesus here is wrestling with drinking the cup of God's wrath. He's able to do this because he is able to pray to his Father, Abba. Folks, it's hard to stress how revolutionary that was. Nowhere in the Old Testament, nowhere did they pray to God as Abba, which is what a little child calls his father. This is Papa. This is Daddy. This is, this isn't dearest Father. This is, you crawl up on his lap and say, "Can I tell you something?" Which you've seen little kids do. The audacity that little children have, they don't care what you're doing. They come in and interrupt you because here I am. I have something to tell you. I went to the potty, And this is Jesus prays to his Father in this way. And because we then are united to him, we are invited to pray in the same way, which is amazing to think about. So this entire, this drama is playing out here in the Garden of Gethsemane as Jesus gets to the point where he can say, "Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." And the disciples are snoring. And Jesus goes to them 3 times, and they can't stay awake. So, he knows what's coming. He knows they're going to flunk miserably, and yet he still understands and he still forgives. This is amazing grace, amazing love here. But finally, the hour has come, he says. So it's important to understand, another little aside here, in Greek there are 2 words for time. The one we're familiar with is chronos. We talk about things being in chronological order. A chronometer is a clock or a watch. That is minutes and seconds. That's 1 minute after another, after another, after another. Time as it inexorably flows on and on. But the Greeks also had the understanding of Kairos time. And that is an appointed time. That is an opportune time, a due season. And it takes wisdom to discern those in the fullness of time moments, those opportune times. So, for instance, your friend calls you and is in distress. Car broke down on the side of the road. Or my card got declined. I'm standing here at Kroger with all of these groceries and I don't have any money. Can you come and help me? You have a limited window of time there to come and help, right? Before that relationship is swirling down the drain. Because I called you, you said you were going to come help me. I waited, and I waited. My ice cream melted. My food expired. They took all my food and put it back on the shelves, and here I am standing here looking like a fool. Where were you? You said you were coming. Well, I got into a good movie. I figured I'd come later when it was over.
Oh my goodness.
No. The window's closed, right? That Kairos opportunity slipped away.
Is that Kairos?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's my kids went to a Kairos retreat.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
This is the time.
I'm trying to fit it.
The appointed time.
Okay.
This is a set aside time. This
Okay.
is an opportune moment. You have an opportunity to do something great here. So this is the hour that we've been waiting for. Jesus has said several times, the hour has not yet come, right? Don't tell anyone about this. The hour is not yet come. Here's the hour. Here's the Kairos moment. It's all been leading up to this in the fullness of time. You read that in the Nativity story. In the fullness of time, when the time was right. What made that time right? I don't know. God knew. That was the appointed time. Watch out for those Kairos moments in your life. Big one is in the story of Esther, right? She becomes queen. Haman gets the plot to murder all of the Jews in Persia. Mordecai comes to Esther and says, you need to go and talk to the king right now on behalf of your people. She says, I can't. He has to summon me first. He hasn't summoned me for a month. He forgot about me. Our relationship's not what it once was, whatever. Mordecai says, you know you became queen for such a time as this. This is your Kairos moment. Seize it. If you don't, he says, God will save his people some other way. You're going to lose out, you and your family. So the fullness of time, the opportune time, the Kairos moment is here. He's about to be betrayed. His disciples are bleary-eyed and half asleep, and they don't quite know, is it Thursday still? Is it Friday? Where are we? That stone was a terrible pillow. I'm tasting that lamb again from Passover, If you'll excuse me, I need to go use the bathroom. All of that happening. And suddenly, immediately, verse 43, Mark's favorite word, Judas comes. And Mark is so coy here. One of the 12. Judas, one of the 12. He comes with a crowd with swords and clubs. Can you imagine? The crowd with swords and clubs came to arrest their king, their Lord. By the way, do you think those swords and clubs would have done anything at all if Jesus hadn't submitted here? John tells us they come up, they say, we're looking for Jesus. Jesus says, it's me, and they all literally fall down on the ground. That's the power of his word. He still goes with them. It's absolutely amazing. Judas had given a sign. The one I kiss is the man. These people don't recognize Jesus, which is very interesting. He's been in the temple the whole week. The one I kiss is the man, and he goes up and he kisses Jesus, saying, Rabbi, it's hard again to express how awful this is? Because this was a kiss of peace. This was a kiss that a student gave in respect to his master, to his teacher, a kiss that showed, that normally would demonstrate, we're good. Our relationship is good. I don't have anything against you. That's what he was outwardly showing, and yet he was using that to betray Jesus, which is just awful. This is the last time Judas appears in Mark's gospel. We know from other gospels that he feels incredible remorse for this. He tries to give the money back. The priests aren't going to have anything to do with that because that's blood money. They don't care what happens to Judas. He goes off and hangs himself. Eventually, his body falls down, and bursts. They bury him, and what the priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees are upset about is, we can't put this money in the treasury. What are we going to do with it? Couldn't care less about him. So they buy a potter's field. It's called the potter's field because a guy who was a potter owned it. And that's where they buried people who were unclean. We still use the term potter's field today to bury the indigent. People who...
What do you mean
the homeless.
unclean? We're all unclean.
He was a suicide, so they couldn't bury him in consecrated ground. Yeah.
Is
So...
that the only thing that would make them unclean?
No.
Lepers.
Okay.
Adulterers, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it was a complex system. But they lay hands on Jesus, they seize him, and here's where Mark is very coy. But one of those who stood by drew his sword
Just like today.
and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. John tells us, long after all of the other characters are dead, this is Peter, proving, I'm here for you, Jesus. And the sword that he uses is not a long sword or broadsword as we see in all of the swashbuckle epics. It's a short sword that could be hidden in your cloak, kind of a long dagger. And Luke tells us he cuts off the small ear, which is the earlobe. Doesn't cut off the whole ear. You can bet he wasn't aiming for that.
I was going to say, that's a good shot.
Yeah, he was aiming for the neck, I'm sure, and missed. The high priest's name we find in other Gospels was Malchus, and Jesus rebukes Peter and reaches out and heals Malchus's ear, and yet still they arrest him. You know, if I was sent to arrest someone and then they healed a guy whose ear had just been cut off, I might rethink that. I might turn around and be like, you know what, we're good. They still arrest him. He still allows them to. But he calls them cowards. You know, I was in the temple all week. He could have arrested me there. But here you come at night with swords and clubs.
Because they didn't want to riot.
Exactly. And look at the riot that they get. The disciples run away, and a young man, here's the fun part, a young man who had followed them, and a lot of people, the tradition is this is Mark himself.
Oh.
This is Mark. If the upper room was in the house of John Mark's mother, we can imagine a young John Mark being very interested in this Jesus and his guys upstairs, sneaking out just in his small clothes, nothing but a linen cloth, and his PJs, you know, and following them until he gets in trouble and runs away naked. There's the riot that happens. One streaker running through the night.
When you say John Mark, is that one person?
Yeah, Mark.
His
Guy
first
who-
name was John?
His first name was John, yeah. But he went by Mark. It's his Hebrew and his Roman name.
Like
Often
Simon,
people had more than one name,
like Simon Peter?
like Simon Peter, yeah. Only Simon Peter's was given by Jesus.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it says elsewhere Mark had a Roman father and a Jewish mother. So this is Mark saying, I was there. What makes this interesting is only Mark tells us this detail. Now remember, Matthew and Luke have Mark open here on the table as they're writing. And they pretty much follow Mark's gospel and add their sources in. They rarely omit anything. There's almost nothing they take out. They just add their sources or their recollections and a few other pieces that makes their gospels longer. They might give more details, they might tell different stories, but they don't leave anything out. But they all leave this out. Only Mark tells this. I think this is his little, by the way, I was there too. Yeah, I didn't do so great either. It wasn't my finest hour
Maybe they
either.
were gone.
Huh?
Maybe they were gone before that happened.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe they scattered.
Or maybe with all the other commotion, they didn't even notice it or didn't see it.
There's all kinds of questions, but Jesus says, let the scriptures be fulfilled.
Mark didn't want to tell that it was big.
No.
Because I read all
Some
of
swords
it.
and everything.
The only one that really knows
He
what's
knows
going on
who's
is.
out there running
Yep.
around in the
I
field,
don't
no.
think Judas had any clue.
I'd be watching the guys with the
Really
weapons.
And I don't think the temple guards had any clue what they were doing.
No, I think they were just doing their job.
Yeah, they had no idea. You know, they think they're gonna take him in there, they're gonna give him a little tongue lashing, whatever,
Yeah,
48 demerits and send him home.
yeah. But Jesus knows, he says the scriptures have to be fulfilled,
Yeah.
and they all flee. Here's what Michael Card has to say. In Mark 14, 51 to 52, we find a tantalizing possibility. Mark tells us of a young man wrapped only in a linen cloth who has been following Jesus. When the mob tries to seize him, he spins around and runs away naked. If Mark's house was indeed the one Jesus used for the Last Supper, perhaps young Mark knew of their intention to spend the night in the garden. And in the middle of the night, hearing the mob pass by his house on their way to arrest Jesus, he leaps out of bed, hurriedly wrapping himself in a linen sheet, hoping to get to Jesus in time to warn him and the disciples of what is about to happen. This is his speculation. Instead, arriving too late, Mark is almost caught and arrested, having identified himself as being with Jesus and the 12. It is a glorious, fascinating, and ultimately unprovable assumption. We don't know.
Is the upper room still there?
No,
Still
it's been
standing?
destroyed. There is a traditional site that you can look at. But that, Jerusalem was flattened.
No, not one stone will stand upon another.
Just the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
And there's some that even think that's not where.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When exactly is Passover?
It begins the first full moon after the vernal equinox.
So it's not like on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday?
The first full moon after the vernal equinox.
Okay.
It goes on a lunar calendar.
I heard, and I don't know, I mean, this is just here and then here and then here. This is all put out as the Passover meal that they had. But I heard it really wasn't the Passover meal, it was the Last Supper. Because they did all of this before the Passover. They wanted to have Jesus crucified before the Passover feast started.
They wanted to have him crucified before the Sabbath,
Okay.
before the Passover Sabbath.
Okay, so
Which-
there's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, see, you're clearing me up, thank you.
Yeah, the whole big thing is we've got to hurry because the Sabbath is coming.
Yeah,
And so we've got to get him crucified and then buried.
before
And they weren't able to finish all of that, which is why the women were going to the tomb
on Sunday.
early Sunday morning to finish.
I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Karen?
You mentioned that all of them flew away.
Yes.
Just
Well, they
All
fled. I don't know if they
except
flew.
all except for Peter. through the courtyard.
Peter and John, yeah.
John did.
And
Yeah.
so, when he did that, and then he struck the ear, you know, and whacked it on earlobe, excuse me. But
Oh, okay.
at least he got that far with the Lord.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm
that's-
not condemning
that's
any of them.
Passover, so that's.
No, but I'm just saying, he was the only one who went that far with the
John.
Lord.
Peter and John, yeah.
But wasn't John back further with his mother?
That was a.
John, we'll see next week, John is the one that gets Peter into the high priest's courtyard.
Say that again?
We'll see next week, John is the one that gets Peter into the courtyard of the high priest, because John knows somebody,
Okay.
and Peter knows nobody. And that is where then the denial will happen, and the rooster will crow and all of that.
And John is one of the 12. I mean, he's.
Yes, Peter,
that
Andrew,
John?
James, and John, that John, yeah.
Okay.
So,
2 other questions. When he says the rooster's gonna crow twice, and you'll deny me 3 times, what is it? First break of day is from midnight to 3 in the morning, and then they come out, they blow the trumpet. And then that period of time is called
Easter is like
the cock's crow.
because.
yes, there is some speculation that it doesn't mean an actual rooster.
Right.
When I read that, that seemed needlessly complicated, and I wasn't gonna bring that up and confuse people, but thank you for bringing it up and confusing people. But yes, some people do think that instead of an actual rooster crowing, it's referring to a certain time that was called the cock's crow. It could be, I don't know. It depends on your interpretation.
The other thing, it's not really a question, but there was the inner circle with the disciples.
Peter, James, and John.
And I wondered how the other disciples felt about that.
There's nothing recorded, but they were real people, so you tell me. Some probably were jealous and had their noses out of joint, and others didn't have a problem with it. Hey, that means they gotta do more work. These are real people, you fill in the blanks.
And that James is not the same as the book of James.
No.
Right.
No, that James is the first of the disciples to die. He dies in the book of Acts. The book of James is written by Jesus' half-brother.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something else that I question, but I'm gonna ask you that when we get to the crucifixion.
Okay, hold that question,
I
yes.
will hold it.
So next week, we will begin the trial of Jesus. It's a 2-part trial. There's trial under Jewish law and trial under Roman law. Each trial has 3 parts. Naturally, again, we have to piece together what the 4 Gospels tell us to give you I'll try and give you the fullness of those 6 parts, because Mark is very terse and skips over a lot of it. He tells you what he wants to tell you, and he keeps the action moving. But we will look at that, and I have a feeling next week you're going to be indignant and outraged,
Oh, wow.
because it's unjust what happens. So let's close with a word of prayer. Gracious Father, we're so grateful for sending you your Son and leaving your Spirit until the work is done. We pray, as always, that you would help us to draw close to you over and over again, to turn away from sin and evil and to turn towards you in repentance. Help us, Lord, to do that over and over this week, and to shine your light and to shine your love. We give you thanks and we praise you in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Please help yourself to more goodies.
Yeah.